1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yes. Perfect. Hello from Manila, and thank you for your time. I feel that there's so much at stake for our world today, and what we do this year could potentially determine what our next decade will look like. Closing the distance has never been harder. I have 3 points I want to share with you. First, my context and why the lessons I'll share are hard-earned. Second, I'll define the problem. And finally, share the principles we're using to live our way into the solution, because we must. So why should you care about the Philippines? Because for the 6th year in a row, Filipinos spent the most time online and on social media globally. 100% of Filipinos on the internet are on Facebook. According to Hootsuite and We Are Social, YouTube this year overtook Facebook as the top social media site here. And because of the pandemic, new users are coming online in Southeast Asia at a blistering pace, adding 40 million new internet users last year compared to 100 million the previous 5 years. As this is happening, it is getting harder and harder for journalists to hold power to account. I know this. In less than 2 years, the Philippine government filed 10 arrest warrants against me. That's 10 criminal charges, 10 times I've posted bail, because I'm doing my job. Last June, I and a former colleague were convicted of cyber libel for a story we published 8 years earlier at a time the crime we allegedly violated didn't even exist. All told, all these charges carry a cumulative penalty of more than 100 years in prison. It's crazy. Okay, but it's not all bad, right? There's hope. I think I bring 3 strands together that help me find the way forward and stay hopeful. First, I head our business and tech, so I'm forced to evaluate the changes and build for the future. Second, I'm an investigative journalist. And finally, I'm the target of attacks online and in the real world. So I get to see these evolving tactics and tell you about them. On International Women's Day, the International Center for Journalists analyzed nearly 500,000 social media posts and showed that 60% were aimed to tear down my credibility, built up over 35 years of journalism, to tear down trust in our reporting. The other 40% are visceral. They're personal, sexist, and misogynistic attacks meant to pound me to silence. As you can see, that's not working. But this brings us to the problem we need to solve if we are to close the distance. American biologist E.O. Wilson said it best. We're facing Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. Social media has become a behavior modification system, and we are Pavlov's dogs, experimented on in real time with disastrous consequences. Facebook is the world's largest distributor of news, and yet studies have shown that lies laced with anger and hate spread faster and further than really boring facts. The very platforms in social media that deliver the facts to you are biased against facts. They're biased against journalists. They are, by design, dividing us and radicalizing us. Let me give you an example we've lived through in the Philippines. One technical decision made by every social media platform, that's to grow with algorithms recommending friends of friends, right? They've all realized that's the most efficient way through A/B testing. So in 2016, after Rodrigo Duterte used social media to help him get elected, this friends of friends algorithm, along with his divisive us against them rhetoric, did this. Here we were, all agreed on the facts in the center. We didn't debate the facts. But if you're pro-Duterte and you were getting recommendations to grow your network for friends of friends, you move further right. If you're anti-Duterte, you move further left. And over time, 5 years, the chasm grew. The algorithms also radicalize. They bring you down the rabbit hole. And this is best shown in the work of Renee DiResta, who she looked at do-it-yourself moms on Facebook who formed a group to make their own baby food, right? If you were in that group, Facebook recommended you join anti-vax groups. And if you clicked on their recommendation, then the next recommendation you got for a group was QAnon. This is the impact of a business model Shoshana Zuboff called surveillance capitalism. When a system gathers your data, knows you better than you know yourself, and serves your most vulnerable moment to a message, to a company, that's called the new advertising, or to a government, the new propaganda, changing your behavior. In today's world, a lie told a million times becomes a fact. Without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without any of these three, democracy as we know it, and beyond that, all meaningful human endeavor becomes impossible. Without facts, we have no shared reality, and it becomes impossible to tackle the existential problems our world faces today: climate change, coronavirus, the battle for truth. We are living in the matrix, fed an illusion we are predisposed to believe, determined by power and money, and our shared reality is splintered into more than 3 billion Truman shows. So what are we going to do? How do we close the distance? It's been nearly 5 years for us in Rappler that we've been living through this hell. In order to live our way into the answer, we focus on 3 pillars. I like threes: technology, journalism, and community. On technology, we have 2 initiatives. I'm working very hard with global groups to find regulations that will leave the best and put guardrails on the worst of text manipulations. Last year, I co-chaired the Infodemics Working Group with former EU Parliament member Marit Kashak. She's now in Stanford. In our paper released last November by the Forum on Information and Democracy, we recommended a dozen systemic solutions and more than 250 tactical steps. I'm watching closely the evolution of the EU's Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act, the UK's Online Harms Bill, the US debate on Section 230. Separately, we at Rappler are building our own tech that protects the public sphere, that protects the facts, that protects the users. We rolled out our new platform called Lighthouse last year and continue to build not just for distribution, but for our communities to grow. When we created Rappler, my elevator pitch is simple. We build communities of action. The food we feed our communities is journalism. We must help independent news organizations survive, because even as the dangers increase for us, the mission of journalism has never been more important. That's part of the reason I sit on the advisory board of the International Fund for Public Interest Media, which aims to raise $1 billion a year to help news organizations survive. In many ways, the virus of lies in the virtual world is more dangerous than the coronavirus, because it is not only highly contagious. When you get infected, you become impervious to facts. You change the way you look at the world. You become angrier, more isolated, and it erupts in events like January 6th on Capitol Hill. Like a drug addiction, it will take years for rehabilitation to close the distance and bring back a shared reality. So what do? I became a journalist because I knew that information is power. Now we have to act, to come together and realize that an atom bomb has been dropped on our information ecosystem. And just like the world did after World War II, when it created NATO, Bretton Woods, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we need to upgrade our medieval institutions to put safeguards around the godlike technology that is manipulating our biology, our Paleolithic emotions. In some ways, I feel like I've jumped out of the plane and I don't know whether my parachute will open high enough for me to survive. What you do at this time matters. Please act now. Close the distance.
I caught up with Maria earlier. After her keynote, we sat down to discuss some of the critical issues that she's been campaigning about, like the access digital platforms have to our personal data. How far do we need to go to protect ourselves? I asked Maria if we had to wean ourselves off current social platforms and find new ways of communicating.
I think this is, this thing of enlightened self-interest. I think they built their way into this. I don't know how it was by accident, but that's what happened. And now they have to have the political will to treat the facts differently from lies, right? That's the fundamental problem. That's why we are in a battle for facts and for truth, because all of the social media platforms treat the data unlike journalists. They don't make a distinction between lies, which spread faster, and facts. So they must do that. So that means they have scale. We're already there. They're just going to have the political will to say we need to protect the public sphere. We need to protect our rational way of thinking. And so we're going to have to make less money.
There are many people in the world of media and outside of the world of media who look up to you, who see your fight in the Philippines, who see what Rappler is doing right now, standing up against fake news, the infodemic, as you described it. It's more dangerous, perhaps, than COVID-19 even. But there is also responsibility from us as consumers. What is that responsibility? How do we share the burden? It can't be just on your shoulders.
So I don't think it's on my shoulders. I think if you were in my place, you would be doing the same thing. We grew up at a time when this was the mission of journalism, right? And I don't think I have any other choice but to do what I'm doing. Having said that, I've heard a lot of news managers kind of like beat themselves up to say, what could we have done? What did we do? Should we be building trust? And then I hear users just like you did. It's really the users. It's really them. I mean, that's certainly what we hear from social media, right? We need media literacy. That's not true. Go back to E.O. Wilson's quote, right? This is manipulating our biology, our Paleolithic emotions. It takes the weaknesses of human nature and manipulates it. It's almost like you went to a psychologist. I'm gonna quote Tristan Harris, like you went to a psychotherapist and you told your psychotherapist your deepest, darkest secrets, and then he goes out and says, I've got this for sale. We have no defenses against this. And that is something we've seen. Look, the other optimistic way to redefine this is to realize that all of us around the world actually have far more in common than we have differences, because those global companies are affecting us all the same way. So, there's no solution for how to manipulate our emotions, how to manipulate our mind. Pavlov's dogs. So the only solution is to make it illegal. We're there. This is how potent the technology is, and we've got to realize that.
I am clicking on your Twitter page right now. Idealist, skeptic, pragmatist, journalist, author, CEO, Rappler. Which person wrote that keynote?
Wow. I guess all, right? So I'm more emotional than I would normally be because of the times, right? And because I'm talking to you. I mean, we became journalists at a far easier time. I just see the runway getting shorter. But I don't have any other choice. I know that whether I go to jail or not will depend on how well we fight the battle for facts.
Give us an assignment. The Skoll World Forum attendees are watching you right now. What assignment would you give us?
I'll give you 3. Demand accountability from technology, put those guardrails in, help independent media survive. And the third one is do more. I've been forced to ask myself, what am I willing to sacrifice for the truth? You are so powerful. Help communities come together. Do more. What are you willing to sacrifice for the truth? This is it. That's the precipice we're standing on. And the more you do, the greater the chances I won't go to jail.
Okay, thank you so much. How can we fail that assignment? There's a lot of pressure right there, and we're willing to take that on. Maria Ressa, idealist, skeptic, pragmatist, journalist, author, CEO of Rappler. Thank you for the assignment. Thank you for the keynote.